What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. I put out an ask on Twitter and YouTube for your questions, and there was a lot. So I've split them into two videos again. Part 1 should be out on Sunday evening. Part 2 probably on Tuesday. I'm going to record them both before the FA Cup semi-final between Watford and Wolves and before Arsenal and Everton as well. So not going to obviously be sure about what goes into them, but hopefully with the questions that you've asked, it won't really matter the outcomes of those matches anyway. So let's just get on with it. 5 questions in this video. Let's start with number 1. So let's start off with Harry Kane. A lot of people asked me about him. The question I picked out was from FPL Fantasy Feeling that says, sure, Kane might score, but does he ever really haul anymore? He's got him in his draft, but is he just too expensive for what he delivers? And I'm basically asking myself the same thing. He's 12.5 million. It's a lot of money to spend on wildcard. Obviously, the good thing about having someone like that is you can downgrade them to anyone else if you need to before the end of the season. But it's a lot of money for a wild card, which is going to define your season at this point. There's only a few game weeks to go. So if we look at the fixtures first, they're not bad. Pretty good, in fact. Huddersfield at home in 34. Then in 35, which is the double game week for Spurs, it's Man City away and Brighton at home. Now, for me, the Brighton game looks good. Man City game not so much. I wouldn't expect too many points from anyone in that Spurs side for that game. A bit like the free hit in 32. I avoided Spurs, which obviously didn't work out for maybe Son and Eriksen, but just wasn't sure where the points were going to come from. And interestingly enough, they played that double game week last year, apart from they were playing Man City at home and Brighton away. So they reversed the home away fixtures. And Kane got 1 goal, 1 assist across the 2 matches. They drew 1-1 with Brighton, lost 3-1 to Man City. So make it out what you will. I mean, ultimately, you shouldn't really pay too much attention to what happened in previous seasons. Obviously, it's all just riding on this season now. But I just thought that was interesting when I researched that I found that. Then in 36, it's West Ham at home, Bournemouth away in 37, and then they end the season with Everton at home. So I like the fact there's 4 home fixtures there. I think they're at this new stadium. Pretty good opening result, 2-0 against Palace, a team that don't concede too many goals. You wouldn't expect them to get thrashed too often. So I think having Huddersfield and Brighton as the next 2 league fixtures there looks really good. And Bournemouth away, I mean, Bournemouth again are a team that I would expect to concede goals. So I quite like Spurs' fixtures. In terms of underlying stats, they've played Arsenal, Southampton, Liverpool and Palace in the last 4. So again, probably 3, maybe even 4 teams you wouldn't expect to concede too many. He's got an expected goals of 1.78. That's from open play, obviously not taking into account penalties and stuff for any of these players. And he scored 2 goals. But that's behind the likes of Martial, Jesus, Sterling, Vardy, Wilson, and even Camarasa at Cardiff, who've got higher expected goals. So I suppose it depends if you think that's going to improve. And given the fixtures he's got coming versus the ones he's had, I think they're pretty decent. And one thing I would consider for someone who's 12.5 million is when are you going to captain him? So game week 34, Huddersfield at home looks great. Obviously, they just lost 4-1 to Leicester, so it looks like a good time to be playing Huddersfield. They're down and out. But if you're going to go for a double game week player, like a Duffy or maybe Murray at Brighton or Camarasa at Cardiff, then that counts out Kane that week. Then in 35, it's Man City away, Brighton at home. I don't think many people are going to captain him that week, given the tough Man City fixture. Maybe you are, but I think it will put a lot of people off. So perhaps you're going to go someone else in the double. Then in game week 36 is West Ham at home, and again, they've not looked great recently. But Liverpool have got Huddersfield at home. So again, if you're going to target Huddersfield, maybe you go for a Liverpool player there. And then 37 is Bournemouth away. I quite like that one, to be honest, because Liverpool got Newcastle away and Man City got Leicester at home. So we'll have to see what Man City are doing kind of Champions League-wise at that point, and who may or may not get rotated. So you're probably going to not want to risk a Man City player there, potentially. So Bournemouth and Huddersfield probably look the best, and maybe West Ham. But again, Liverpool have got Huddersfield in game week 36. And last day of the season, who knows? I mean, we'll know a lot more then. Will the league be tied up? Will there still be stuff to play for? What's happening with Europe, FA Cup finals and stuff like that? So Man City have got Brighton away, Liverpool got Wolves at home, and Spurs have got Everton at home. And Everton have been doing all right recently. But on the last day of the season, that might be okay. So I think there's a good few fixtures there. You might look at captaining him. Arguably, you could do Son or Eriksen instead, maybe. But underlying stats are looking okay. He's got 18 goal attempts in the last 4, which is the highest. Now, to be fair, that is along with Higuain, who I don't think many people are looking at in their team. I think Kane is a little bit of a different animal, and he's got penalties, which is nice as well. So I am siding right now with having him in my team, but it's not set in stone. I do think double Spurs midfielder's got some legs and could be a goer. A lot of people talk about how Kane comes to life at the end of the season. He did score 5 goals and get 1 assist in the last 6 games last year, so maybe there's something to that. But as pointed out in the question, you're kind of looking for hauls for 12.5 million. So for me, if the fixtures I read out, if you're looking to captain him in those fixtures, then I think he's a good buy. If you're not, then there might be better value elsewhere getting Spurs midfielders in. Eriksen's played a lot of games recently and looks pretty nailed. You've got Son there as well for good value. They can definitely kick up the points just like Kane for less money, and then you can spread that elsewhere in your wildcard. So let me know in the comments below, Kane in or Kane out. So Grasslover asked, and hopefully this is the stuff you find in Fields, not elsewhere, which we won't go into on this video. So thoughts on pre-planned transfers. Now, I don't usually like to plan too far ahead because too much can change in FPL form-wise. Someone drops off form, gets into form, someone's dropped, they start playing, there's a big injury or something like that. You don't want to plan too far ahead where you're kind of set in stone and you're not flexible. I think being flexible in FPL is key, but also having a little bit of a plan, maybe a couple of game weeks ahead of what you're going to do is fine too. What I wouldn't want to do is, for example, a few people might look at Vardy, who could do really well in the next couple of fixtures, even though he's got no double game week. They might put him on their wild card for 34 with a view to changing him for 35 for a double game week player. Now, if that double game week player also has an okay 34 fixture, personally, I'd rather save the transfer and hope that I maybe need it for something else rather than booking that in. Now, where I will use a pre-planned transfer myself, for example, is switching maybe game week 34 players into game week 35 if they've both got double game weeks. So, for example, Camarasa has a double game week in 34, but doesn't in 35. And so what I might do is leave enough money in the bank to have him for the game week 34 double game week, and then switch him in 35 for a Watford or a Southampton attacker or midfielder who's around the same price, maybe slightly more. And then I've got their double game week and game week 35. So in that point, I'm maximising the amount of double game weeks. But in terms of pre-planning my transfers out for the next kind of 4 or 5 weeks, I definitely wouldn't do that. And I wouldn't like to say put a transfer on the books for game week 36 or 37 because so much can change before then. It's fine to have it in your mind and think I might do that, but you need to remain flexible and just realise that anything else could happen. So for me, yes, in the very, very short term, but I wouldn't want to plan too long, especially at this end of the season. You want to be flexible and make transfers when you need to and get all the points you can because the season's over soon, so you've got to make the most of it. So Mahmood Yassin asks, Aguero or Sterling, or just ignore them on the wild card. Obviously, you can take into account other Man City attackers as well for this. Now, the one thing that comes out for me for the Man City players is their fixture pile-up. So Adam Hockcroft was speaking about this on Twitter. It gets pretty nasty, especially if they make it through the Champions League quarter-final against Spurs and get through to the semi-final. Then it just gets even worse. So they've just had an FA Cup game against Brighton. Then it's Spurs in the Champions League. Then it's Palace for game week 34. Then it's Spurs again in the Champions League. Spurs in the double, Man United in the double. So the double game week is pretty horrible for them. Even though obviously they are one of the best 2 teams in the league, still having to play Spurs and Man United, you wouldn't expect too many points and probably a bit of rotation. Then it's Burnley. Then it's the Champions League semi, potentially, if you think they're going to beat Spurs, which I think most people would think Man City are favourites, although obviously anything can happen there. Then it's Leicester. Then it's another Champions League semi. Then it would be Brighton to end the season. They play quite a few away games in that run as well. So I'm siding with limiting the amount of Man City players I put in, but not necessarily completely going without at all. So to answer the question, Aguero or Sterling, I think for me it would have to be Sterling right now. Aguero's injured. We don't know if he's going to be back for the next game. He might well be by the time this comes out. And you watch it, maybe we'll have more news. But Jesus has come in. He scored a couple of important goals as well. He scored the goal in the FA Cup semi. So he's an option too. The one thing I would say about Aguero, though, is this season, when he's been fit, he has been the number one, which is obvious. But even when Jesus has been back and he's been back for a little while, back into training properly, he hasn't really taken Aguero's place. Whereas I think last season, or maybe even the season before that, we saw him interchange quite a lot, and Jesus actually looked like the favourite, but Aguero is definitely the number one man, so I think he will play in most games. But I just think for that double game week, where are the points necessarily coming from? For Spurs, Man United, yes, they're a great team, Man City, and they could score, but you'd imagine there'll be quite tight games, especially with so many other fixtures around them as well. So I'm probably not going to go for both of these players. If I had to pick one for Sterling, if I look at the last 4 matches, I can't look over the last 4 game weeks because obviously Aguero's been injured. So the last 4 matches obviously takes into different matches for the 2. But stats-wise, they're quite similar. Like in terms of shots, chances created, they're very high up. Sterling beats Aguero on expected goals and expected assists, though, especially from open play. Obviously, Aguero has penalties, which is nice, but they're not a guarantee. So for me, it's very close if they both play. I think there's a chance that Sterling potentially gets more minutes, but if Aguero is back fully fit and ready to go, and Jesus kind of falls out of favour again, then Sterling probably will see rotation midfield and Aguero won't. So from that aspect, maybe Aguero is slightly better. But I think Sterling minutes-wise is probably one of the better midfield options from City. So he would be the one, if you want to go for one of them, to go for. But I do think there's an argument for going without completely, given their fixture pile-up and the tough fixtures that they have. So let me know below what you're thinking. But for me, Sterling, maybe De Bruyne. That's who I've currently got in my wildcard draft. But even he, I would expect rotation. But I do like the fact he played both games in the double game week after not being back for too long. But there are newspaper articles that have kind of come out and said, he said himself that he's not going to be up to full fitness, and actually you're not really fresh after having an injury because you have to do so much kind of rehab work to get back up to scratch. And it's actually, he didn't say this directly, but like kind of demoralising because you're away from the group and you've got to work just as hard to get to full fitness, but you're not getting to play matches. So be interested to see how he does. He's come back and looked pretty good. It's just whether or not he'll play enough minutes. So I'm a bit wary about Man City, if I'm honest. I probably won't be going for Aguero. Will Saunders asks, is double Liverpool defence a good differential? Home games are generally clean sheets. So I do think it will be a differential going forward. Whether or not it's a good one is obviously a different question. But I think a lot of people on Wildcard probably won't go for double defence, and I'm probably in that boat. So here's why. I mean, let's start off with the fixtures first of all. They're actually pretty good and probably in favour of clean sheets. Chelsea at home, Cardiff away, Huddersfield at home, Newcastle away, Wolves at home. So there are some good home fixtures there, but two of them are Chelsea and Wolves. Wolves on the last day of the season, so who knows what will happen there. But the Chelsea one will be tough. Yes, they could get a clean sheet, but someone like Hazard could quite easily score a goal in that fixture, which would obviously take away those clean sheet points. But Cardiff, Huddersfield and Newcastle in between do look good for clean sheets. So I'm looking at Liverpool players and one defender. There's a couple of reasons why I'm not too keen on going two defenders. One of them is something you can't measure, and no one can tell you for sure how it will affect the players, but it's pressure. We're getting towards the end of the season. They're on for potentially their first ever Premier League title. A lot of the players not been in that position before. The pressure could get to some players, and it could mean maybe they've got to go out and score goals instead of keeping clean sheets. We saw Southampton score. To be fair, they were really good, Southampton, but I think a lot of people would have expected a Liverpool clean sheet there, and they didn't get one. So how many will they get towards the end of the season? I mean, I can see probably 3, which would be a good return from 5 games, but can we see the odd goal being conceded in those games? Quite possibly. So I'm not sure how pressure will affect them. Maybe it won't, and maybe Man City will falter at some point because they got really tough fixtures we've just talked about. And if they drop some points, that might make it a bit easier for Liverpool, but I definitely won't count on that. But the bigger reason is I think Gomez is back now, and we saw Trent Alexander-Arnold against Southampton get taken off because basically Southampton were targeting that left side where he plays on Liverpool's right side, of course. And he came off for Milner. Now, I don't necessarily expect him to not start going forward. I don't think Klopp's going to go back to playing Milner there, but it kind of showed to me that it's in the back of Klopp's mind that if it is going wrong down that right side, the move isn't to give him protection, it's to get him off the pitch. And he came off before the 60th minute. It didn't really matter because the clean sheet had already gone, but that would worry me a bit. And with Gomez back, Lovren around as well, there could be a rotation. We've seen Gomez play right back before. So it would worry me a little bit, paying. I think Trent's up to 5.5 million now or something like that. So if he's on the pitch, he's great, and he does take some set pieces, and he's got a great cross on him. So there's definitely points potential there, attacking and defensive wise. But he would just worry me, and I don't know who else I'm going for outside of Van Dijk and Robertson. And those two on a wildcard seem a little bit too expensive when there's other options with double game week. So for me, I'm probably going to go with one. I'll stick with Robertson. He's been so good all season. Not double defence for me, but it could be a great differential, like you say. And last question for this video, nice and simple from Andre Reed. Wolves defence, is it worth it? So my initial quick answer is I don't know if I really want Wolves players, or defenders, sorry. Not Wolves players in general, but Wolves defenders. If I look at the fixtures in particular, I'm not sure where the clean sheets are coming from. And yes, there's some attacking threat from the likes of Doherty, Vinagre, and Johnny as well. But the bread and butter of defender is to get clean sheets ultimately. So their next lot of fixtures are Southampton away. Not convinced there's one there. Then it's Brighton at home and Arsenal at home. Now I actually quite like the defence for that double game week. Not necessarily for the Arsenal fixture because of the Brighton one. And then obviously they get a couple of appearance points against Arsenal. Maybe if they can nick a clean sheet or an attacking return. I quite like them for the double. But then it's Watford away, Fulham at home and Liverpool away. So I'm not seeing many clean sheets there. Maybe the Fulham game, maybe the Brighton game. And that's it. And if you look over the last 4 matches, Doherty, 2 goal attempts, 2 chances created. I said this in a recent video. I think a lot of us are remembering back to the glory days when he got a lot of attacking returns. And they've not necessarily been happening recently. And they're not getting clean sheets either. So the big hauls aren't coming. And also, we have seen the wing-backs rotated quite a bit. And at the time of recording this, Watford haven't played Wolves in the FA Cup yet, so I'm not sure what's going to happen there. But if they go through in the FA Cup, that could make things even worse as we get towards the end of the season. So I don't know if there'll be a huge amount of rotation, but there could be, and that might put me off enough to get him. If you've not already got these players, then Doherty's 5.3 million now. It's quite a lot. It's a bit different for me because I've got him for 4.4 million. So I may look at keeping him. If you look at kind of defensive underlying stats wise, where they are in the kind of table over the last 4 for kind of shots conceded in the box and in total, they're kind of middle of the road, kind of what you'd expect for kind of their position in the league. Obviously they're doing well, not quite top 6, but best of the best. So the defence is pretty good. It's not awful and it's not great. So like I say, potential clean sheets for the Brighton and Fulham games, maybe Southampton in the next game week, but I'm not convinced there. But for 4.4 million, if you got Doherty early, you don't necessarily need to play him this week. And if you're bench boosting in game week 35, with Brighton home and Arsenal home, I might look at him. But I don't think I'll be looking at Patricia, and I don't think I'll be looking at doubling up. And it would worry me about them playing 2 games in quick succession that we could see some rotation there. So that's it for this video. Thanks very much for watching. If you enjoyed it, make sure to leave a thumbs up. Always appreciate it. And subscribe if you're new around here. We just hit 28,000 subscribers. So thanks very much to everyone that has hit that button and watched the videos, interacted, etc. Leave a comment below if you've got any other questions or thoughts and feedback on this video. Always like to hear that. Otherwise, I will leave it there. There'll be another video later this week, including streams as well. So lots to come on the channel before game week 34. Looking forward to it. Catch you soon, everyone.